It is.
Yeah,
It's
15
it's a chilly place.
Celsius. Yeah, that's still a little warm for me. I could go a little bit colder than that.
Yeah. In the winter, it'll get very cold.
Nice.
Wow.
That was a very adult conversation we just had about weather.
Would you like me to think of some dick jokes instead?
Well, I was just going to say that we'll go from adult conversations about weather and we'll go back to childish conversations about superhero movies.
Wacky Batman.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Smark Avengers. My name is Corey, and with me, as always, is John and Dylan. Actually, this is the
Hi.
return of John.
Hi, John. How are you?
Hi.
I am sick as a dog, to quote Dr. Evil.
Did Germany make you sick?
No, I was sick beforehand, and then I think Germany probably made it worse.
Oh.
But it's okay. I'm going to a music festival next week, so that will surely make me way better.
Who are you gonna go see?
I'm going to Glastonbury.
Who's headlining?
Someone. I think it's Coldplay and
Ooh.
Dua Lipa and someone whose name I don't know how you pronounce. I think it's Scissor or Sizer or SZA.
That's a Pokemon.
So yeah.
That's so funny, man. When is that? Because I'm going to see Jane's Addiction next week.
Ah man. I wish I was going to see Jane's Addiction.
You can come along, man. It's on Friday. Just come on over. Dublin. You get the flight to Dublin, and then it's like you get the bus down from the airport to the city center.
I need to stop you real quick. You just no sold Shania Twain being there.
Oh yeah, Shania Twain's there.
That's a pretty big name.
Somebody can't his name I can't pronounce. Shania. I don't know who it is.
You only asked who the headliners were.
She's listed as one of the headliners. Yeah, the top of the billing is like Dua Lipa, Coldplay, SZA, and Shania Twain.
Wow, she's the they always do a legend spot on the Sunday.
Yeah, she's in the legend spot. Yeah.
How much are tickets to Glastonbury?
I think it was about 350 quid, maybe a bit more. It used to be. I first started going in 2005. It used to be half that price, probably.
Yeah, but not everybody goes there because it's a cool hip thing to do.
Yeah, that's the thing.
400. That's 442 American dollars. Holy shit, that's a good bit.
It used to be pretty not easy, but like you could still get tickets quite late in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like as soon as they go on sale on the first Sunday of October, they sell out in about 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And that's without any acts being announced or anything. Like we didn't find out the lineup until basically a month ago.
Yeah, my friends always trying to get me to go, and I'm like, dude, first of all, there's no fucking way I would go to it. It's too big. Like I would have such a bad time. There's too many people there. But second of all, I don't want to pay £300 for something where I don't even know who's playing. Like, what if I pay £300 for like just a bunch of shit I don't want to go see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I would pay to go see a music festival if it's people I really want to go see. Like I want to go see Faith No More at some point. Like Faith No More are like on my bucket list of guys I want to see. But they only play like festivals now. They don't do a tour. They if they come to the UK, they only do like Glastonbury or Download or Rad stuff like that. Big festivals. And I'm like, dude, I want to pay £300 to see a bunch of shitty bands I don't care about and Faith No More. I just want to see Faith No More. Let them do like a fucking one-off gig in Dublin or something so I can go see him and be happy.
Anyway, we're talking about Batman. So we're talking about Batman movies today. I called this a 90s Batman thing, but then Dylan wanted to be pedantic and bring up the fact that the first Batman movie by Tim Burton was 1989. So we'll call this
pedantic. I think that's numerically accurate.
That is pedantic.
That's correct, is what it is.
So regardless, we'll call this Batman movies 1989 to 1997.
Thank you.
Does that sound good?
It's not really, but we'll go with it.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
Well, none of our titles really do they?
So this is sort of a return to form in a sense for us because we've done a couple of these episodes where we just focus on a particular chunk of superhero movies. So we've already covered the X-Men movies, we covered the Spider-Man movies, the MCU stuff. We've talked about some of the DCEU stuff. So this is kind of that period of time in the 90s where there really wasn't superhero movies except for Batman, which kind of came about in 1989. So we're gonna hit Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and then Batman and Robin. So the sort of the benefit of Batman being owned by Warner Brothers is that getting a movie made can be really fucking simple for them. So real quick, what's everybody's experience with these Batman movies?
I like 3 out of 4 of them.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's
it's
the
the
first
consensus.
2 especially are really, really good.
Yes. Well, I think didn't we establish our favorite Batman is Michael Keaton?
Yes.
I think 2 out of 3 of us. That was like so if you want to know hear that episode, that was from volume 2 of the Smark Avengers, which was over a year or so ago. I think it was actually over a year ago where we broke down the individual actors who played Batman, dating back to like the 1930s serials and then moving all the way to the Robert Pattinson The Batman. So we did touch on Michael Keaton and Val Kilmer and George Clooney there. So that being said, I don't think we'll speak too much about that because we don't want to retread territory like I did when I repeated the same gender fluid joke for Hydro Man. But acted surprised, like I just thought of it a second time again. So yeah, that was
my favorite bit. We were talking about Hydro Man and whether I don't remember the specifics of it, but Corey audibly went because he thought of a joke. And then said the joke with such glee in his voice, and then immediately after doing the joke, you could hear the dejection where he was like, "Oh, I've done this already." It was such a beautiful 20 seconds. You know what I mean?
It was beautiful. So anyway, we're going back to the 80s and 90s. We're going to talk a bit about sort of the Tim Burton influence and the themes and the moods that were captured there, the transition to the Joel Schumacher, and then ultimately kind of end up with where did it go wrong? Which I will tell you is into that Joel Schumacher era. So what is going on with this? So this came about, like I said, it was 1986. Tim Burton got hired to direct this version of Batman. This came about with it looks like Steve Englehart and Julie Hickson were brought on to write the film treatments before Sam Hamm wrote the first screenplay. Batman was not greenlit until after the success of 1988's Beetlejuice, though. So this was already written and prepared, but they didn't pull the trigger until Beetlejuice was a big hit in 1988. The tone and theme of the movies were influenced more by Alan Moore and Brian Bollard's The Killing Joke and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. And the film primarily adapts and then diverges from the Red Hood origin story for the Joker, which involves a gangster getting dropped into a vat of chemicals and being transformed into a psychotic individual. Apparently, also Bob Kane was brought in as a consultant for the film. Very famously, Bob Kane at this time was considered the sole creator of Batman, completely ignoring Bill Finger's contributions, which, again, if you've ever seen the Bob Kane idea for what Batman was, you will appreciate Bill Finger's contributions way more. Basically, I think his version of Batman was just a guy wearing a suit, just a business suit with wings sticking out the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the look came about because of Bill Finger. So anyway, there was kind of a traditionally Michael Keaton's casting was considered very controversial because he was considered a comedy actor. And I'm not, if you're familiar with a lot of Michael Keaton's works, I mean, we've got, I always think of Night Shift, and that's such a weird cut to pull from Michael Keaton's comedy is fucking Night Shift.
Especially when you just mentioned Beetlejuice.
Exactly, right? My first thought went Night Shift. I don't know why, but I was just thinking of his joy and excitement when he pitches the idea of edible garbage. But so this is so real quick, we'll kind of dive into the plot, as I said, it's the origin of the Red Hood. Batman is an individual who's still very new to Gotham. Uh, encounters the Jack Napier characters played by Jack Nicholson. We have Commissioner Gordon. We have Alfred. There's a scene where, to a Prince song, they completely deface a museum. It's fun all around.
Classic bit.
Classic bit. Who doesn't love that scene?
Mm-hmm.
I think about it every time I go to a museum, and then that sort of the inner thoughts tell you like, yes, like smear paint on that picture.
I think about it every time I hear a Prince song.
It's a good song. But yeah, so the main actors, of course, here, like I said, mentioned, or we have Jack Nicholson as the Joker, Michael Keaton as Batman, Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale, who is a reporter for the Gotham newspaper and the primary love interest. We've also got some smaller bit roles like Michael Goff as Alfred Pennyworth, and he returns for all 4 movies as Alfred. Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent, and really that's it when it comes to larger name actors for the most part.
I mean, shout out to Pat Hingle as well. He was Commissioner Gordon in all 4 movies.
Yeah, but it was such a small role. Like, it's so funny, like, when you consider the importance of the Commissioner Gordon role and how little he had to do in those 4 movies. Like, especially if you compare it against, like, Gary Oldman's version from the Christopher Nolan movies, or even the more recent, the Batman, and like where he's more of an active partnership with Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So it is weird to think like how small a role the Commissioner Gordon character is. But yeah, no, Tim Burton has a very unique idea of what Batman looks like and what the world of Gotham is. Like I said, I think we touched a bit on this, but Gotham really has a character as like a city in this movie.
Hell yeah. The Gothic architecture makes it pop big time.
Yeah, it really stands out. You know, visually it looks great. That's one thing I do remember about those 2 Tim Burton films is the almost like the atmosphere within the city itself. Yeah, it had a style, much like a lot of Tim Burton films. It had a style that I think some of the other Batman films after that didn't quite nail. Identity, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
Especially as things started to get a bit more neon as the series went on.
Yeah, that's we'll get into the Joel Schumacher influences and where those came from. But it is like, if you watch it, it is such a so the Tim Burton style has been, I mean, the man's been directing films now for like 40 years, so his style is very well known and in fact overplayed at times because of it. Like, it's almost a parody of itself. But like, you could put this movie on, and without knowing anything about it, you could tell this is a Tim Burton movie. Like, just the way it's shot, the looks, the designs of the city and everything. It's a very toned down and reserved Tim Burton, but you can like still see it.
Yeah, and it's sort of wild that he was even offered the job in the first place, because basically before he got the job, the only movie he directed was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Like, and then obviously Beetlejuice came afterwards, after he'd already started production on Batman. But yeah, it's like, it feels like a pretty big swing for Warner Brothers to take on a guy who is largely untested and who obviously has this sort of not exactly mainstream vision as well. Like, all of his, especially his early movies, like Edward Scissorhands and Sleepy Hollow and stuff like that, like, they all have such a distinctly dark and like gothic visual aesthetic to them.
But then, I think that's like they kind of accidentally stumbled into the good recipe for Batman, though, because the good thing about Batman is people forget when they think about Batman on in media is because of the campy '60s show. They think Batman's all like fun and games and screwing around and stuff, which the old comics were. But then as they got further on, the comics became very dark and really like serious, and you know, Tim Burton's the perfect guy to inject that kind of darkness into that film. Not a whole lot of other directors would have had that kind of foresight. to and whether he did that, whether they cast him like that on purpose or not, I don't know. But like in hindsight, it's really, really good casting to get Tim Burton there, because like I said, he does have that. He already has that style of this weird, quirky darkness, and Batman's a quirky character, but that always has a darker side, and the as strange as it might have seemed, it actually is like a perfect match.
So to kind of go into that, if we're gonna look, you mentioned like what Batman was like in the past. So some of the very first Batman appearances were really dark. Like Joker is one of the very first, if not very first, villain Batman encountered back in the 30s, and he was straight up a murderer. And what kind of changed that was, like, of course, the comics code, which, basically people thought that comics were corrupting the youth. So they created this code of authority where a lot of very stringent rules were put onto the content of the books, which is where you got things like the silly Silver Age, where things got really sci-fi and goofy. And that there was a maturing process that had to happen with Batman going through like the Bronze era in the 70s and then working his way into the 80s, where you did get like Dark Knight Returns and Killing Joke and all of the really darker stuff that like the Frank Millers and Grant Morrison and Alan Moore brought to Batman of that period of time. So that's originally like that's what drew Tim Burton into doing this. Tim Burton is not a comic book fan, doesn't care for him at all. So like why he took the Batman job is he saw Dark Knight Returns and liked a lot of the imagery. So like Frank Miller is kind of responsible for how this movie turned out, which is interesting to say. I'm not a big Frank Miller person, but you can, if you know that going in, you can kind of see that influence of how dark everything is. Like Gotham is a dark city. Like even during the day, it's fucking overcast. There ain't no sunny days in Gotham.
Yes, it's a very like dour kind of place, like mentally and structurally. You know what I mean? It always seems like there's a cloud over it.
So we talked a good bit about Michael Keaton's casting and how that raised a big stink amongst comic book fans, because at that point Michael Keaton was more known for Mr. Mom and Night Shift and other movies of that ilk. So he's more of a comedy actor.
Yeah, just focus on the two important ones.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep pushing Night Shift in there. You should watch it. Anyway,
John, have you seen Night Shift?
Yeah, have you seen John? Yeah, John, what's your movie count at? And is Night Shift in there?
So I haven't watched a lot of movies in the last week, so I'm still on 369.
Still overshot it. Fuck. We were taking guesses on how many movies you would have seen by the time you returned. I had 394.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
Dylan, that was ambitious.
I think I said 17.
You said 18. So if we're doing like the Price is Right rules of like closest without going over, Dylan won.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, work Night Shift onto that and let us know what you think of it. So anyway, of course, originally the ideas were Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray, Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid. Apparently Pierce Brosnan was also considered. Willem Dafoe even was considered. And they went with Michael Keaton because he was in a movie called Clean and Sober, where it was very apparently was through on the drama real hard. So we mentioned that like 50,000 protest letters got sent to Warner Brothers from fans who were worried that by casting a comedic actor that it was going to turn into another 1960s Batman. And Keaton also studied The Dark Knight Returns for inspiration. So again, Frank Miller having a big role in this. So we talked about that. We one sentence or less. What do you think of Keaton? And we'll move on to Joker.
Loved him.
Yeah, I mean, I think his Batman was pretty damn good, but his Bruce Wayne as well. You could sort of feel the pain of the loss of his parents a lot. So, yeah.
Yep.
You nailed it.
So, these are the actors who are considered to play the Joker: Tim Curry, David Bowie.
Oh.
John Lithgow,
Ooh.
Ray Liotta,
Oh.
James Woods,
Okay.
Brad Dourif.
I don't know who that is.
You know who Brad Dourif is? Chucky, the killer
Oh,
doll.
okay. Okay.
Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings.
Then what? I've never seen Lord of the Rings.
Oh my god. He also apparently wanted to cast John Glover, who has a lot of very interesting roles. If we're gonna bring, like, he was in Scrooge, he was in Gremlins 2.
He was in one of the Batman movies as well.
Yeah, he was the voice of Riddler in the Bruce Timm Batman.
He
show.
was Dr. Jason Woodrue in Batman and Robin.
Yeah, and he also was Lex Luthor's father in Smallville.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, John Glover was who they wanted, but then they insisted that no, it needs to be a bigger name actor. Apparently, Robin Williams wanted the part but didn't get it. So Jack Nicholson was the top choice since 1980.
Wow.
Apparently, they've been after him since he was in The Witches of Eastwick. So fans loved Jack Nicholson as the role, but here's my favorite part of this. At this point, Jack Nicholson is a massive star. We all know this. And as such, he had the most unique demands. So here you go. Nicholson had what was known as an off-the-clock agreement. His contract specified the number of hours he was entitled to have off each day from the time he left the set to the time he reported back to filming. So he was like, I get all this time off, including commute, as well as being off for all LA Lakers home games. He demanded all of his scenes be shot in a 3-week block and that the schedule lapsed into 106 days. He reduced his standard $10 million fee for a $6 million fee in exchange for a cut of the film's earnings, which led to him getting in excess of $50 million. So good deal on his part. And I think that somebody reports that he might have actually gotten $90 million. And he also got top billing. So he got top billing over Michael Keaton.
I mean, to be fair, this is more the Joker's movie than Batman's movie, so it kind of makes sense.
So obviously, let's talk about Jack Nicholson as Joker. I think he was the closest we will ever get to a comic book accurate Joker, ever. He was deranged. He kept like the more. See, I like my Joker to still have some of that crime boss leanings to it. I'm not super crazy on, like, ever since Heath Ledger was Joker, comics and stuff are really leaning into, like, oh, the Joker's an anarchist. It's all about chaos. It's like, I still like him to have like a fucking like scheme, like a plot, and not just like violence for the sake of violence.
Yeah, I feel like that really became a thing more recently, which I don't like either.
I had so many great one-liners in this movie as well.
Corey, what's your favorite one?
Well, I mean, you know, Have You Ever Danced with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight ended up on, like, I think the top 100 movie lines of all time.
Yeah.
What about you, Dylan?
I like the one where he said the thing which I'm about to tell you right.
Can I tell you the other one that I'm a big fan of?
Yes.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
That is pretty good.
And he says it so seriously. John, what are your thoughts on Keaton? Or not Keaton, but Nicholson as Joker?
Yeah, I thought he was perfect in the role. So entertaining. And like, you see the sort of transformation really well as well, from the sort of smug and sadistic crime boss to the clearly deranged and maniacal Joker. Like, I thought that transformation was done really well. But yeah, I thought he was fantastic, and the biggest bummer about him being in the movie is he doesn't make it out of it alive. So it was like the one and only time we got to see this version of Joker.
Mm-hmm. I mean, love that Joker. Those scenes were perfect. I mean, every scene he showed up in, he was amazing. Every single one of them. Just looked the part, acted the part. dress the part. I just do not think we're going to get a better one, even though I think it was deleted scenes in the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. What, Barry Keoghan is like the Joker in that world, unless they do some recasting. And even then, it's like such a weird look. I'm not sure if you guys saw those deleted scenes from that movie.
Yeah, it looked as if they were leaning heavily into the Heath Ledger side of things as well, with like the weird sort of prosthetics on the face.
Yeah, it looked more like, I think someone mentioned it looked more like chemical burns, like something that, like if he fell into a vat of chemicals, this is probably what he would actually look like.
Yeah, yeah.
So, normally I save this for the end, but there's only 4, so I'll, do them as they come. This Batman movie got a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, very well loved, and it made $411 million in the box office. So very, very successful. Considering the budget was only 48 million, so made it back and then a ton more. So are you ready to move past Batman and into the sequel to this?
Very much so.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're going to head to 1992. I'm 5 years old, and this is the very first movie I ever saw in a movie theater, Batman Returns. Which
Holy
was a
shit, what a
choice.
movie to be watching it. Yeah.
Yeah,
5 years
right?
old.
Right. I think it explains a lot, probably. So Michael Keaton is back in the role of Batman. Tim Burton is back in the directing chair, and we get 2 new villains for this movie because, as John mentioned, Jack Nicholson's Joker did not make it out of alive in the prequel. So we have Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. So before we do any sort of deeper dives in that, any thoughts just off the cuff?
This is my favorite Batman film. I
I mean,
love
I
this
can
film.
understand why.
I remember seeing this kid. I remember seeing this as a kid. I didn't see it in the cinema like Corey did, but I saw it at home, and so much of this film, like I remember it like clear as day. Just because there's so many little bits in it and that's good cinematography. It's good. It's good directing. It's good stuff like that. Where like there's all these little bits in it that are so memorable. And there's definitely some bits in it where you look back at it now as an adult and go, it's kind of stupid, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a bit where I think this is in the second one where Bruce Wayne has like a hard drive and he like plays it he scratches it like a record player, a DJ. I'm like, I don't think you can do that with a hard drive. Or there's a bit where Penguin Penguin has this giant like rubber duck mobile.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's really stupid. But also, when you see it, especially as a kid, you're like, that's cool as hell. Like the bits where all the penguins were running around, that was cool. The bit that I remember the most that stuck with me for years, I'll never ever forget this, was when the penguin bit that guy's nose off.
Yeah. That again, when you're talking about that's an intense first movie in a theater.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, to
Yes,
see that when
that
you
stays
see
with
that
you.
when you're a kid, like that
Stays.
sticks with you. It's so real. And what I like about that film is when you watch it as a kid, you see all this stuff and like, yeah, fuck you. But then whenever you watch it as an adult, you're like, you really get that like the penguin is this just, you know, real downtrodden, like he doesn't want to be seen by people, and then he's manipulated into coming up above ground, and then he's screwed over by those people, and then he gets angry about that with good reason, with 100% good reason. Like he knew this was going to happen. He didn't want to come up above he didn't want to interact with people, and they screwed him over just like he thought they would. So he's justified in his anger towards people, which is stuff you understand when you're older. Um, oh, dude, it's such a good film. Plus, um, it's real good. Michelle Pfeiffer's incredible
Hmm.
as Catwoman. She's got the whip. She's really good in that film.
Yeah.
because
There's
she
that
does the
footage.
whole, like the duality of people. We talk about that with Batman and Bruce Wayne, but she does that really well with Catwoman and whoever Catwoman's real persona is, whose name I've forgotten right now.
Mhm.
What's her name?
Selena
Catwoman's
Kyle.
persona. Yeah.
Selena Kyle. Perfect. She does a really good job of like once the suit's on, they're a different person, and that comes off like really, really clearly.
Well,
Yeah.
there's that famous behind the scenes footage of her nailing the whip tricks like in one shot, and the production crew applauding afterwards. So I mean, she did very very well job even in that perspective. But
Also, Christopher Walken's in this film, and he's my favorite actor. What's funny is him and Michael Keaton, two of my favorite actors. They're both in the same film.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
So just some background on this one. Tim Burton was really reluctant to make this movie at first because he does not like sequels. Because he said that,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Cough loudly, Beetlejuice 2.
You mean Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice?
Yeah.
I still that is fucking brilliant. Just so you know, they
What's
got to
the
make a
third
third
one?
one now, right?
Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I said it 3 times.
Do you remember the Freakazoid episode where there was that one villain? If you said his name, he'd appear and take you away.
Was
I
it
think
Joe
so.
Hendry?
John, this is why I'm glad you're back, because every now and then you just come out of fucking nowhere with a one-liner. Oh, damn. All right. So
Got us.
anyway,
You got
so
us.
this movie's a little more of original. Tim Burton has a lot more control over like his image in this, and you can tell. There's a lot more Tim Burton apparent here, whether it's Penguin's circus of freaks that are his henchmen, or just how the city's designed. Maybe it's also the fact that fucking Paul Rubens has a cameo in this movie, which is hysterical. Like when I realized that as I got older. I think originally they wanted to do Riddler and Penguin as the villains, but the studio pushed more for Catwoman, which was a good idea.
Yeah. I
Hell
think
yeah.
so.
Much different dynamic, especially because you could do the sort of the cat and mouse sort of romance tension between the two characters, Batman and Catwoman, and yeah, it just another thing I saw was that Danny DeVito really didn't want to do this at first. And I think he had to be convinced by Jack Nicholson to do it, and Tim Burton. And I think like the idea that I read it here that he got it because Tim Burton gave him a picture of a small man sitting on a red and white striped ball with the caption, "My name is Jimmy, but my friends call me the hideous penguin boy." And apparently that was all Danny DeVito needed to get an idea of what this character was supposed to be.
But also, like that's what I mean. Like that's the perfect representation of the Penguin.
Yes.
It's like if you say that Jack Nicholson is the perfect Joker, Danny DeVito is the perfect Penguin. 100%.
He's definitely a version of the penguin.
You don't think he's the perfect Penguin?
No,
Well,
I mean, so it's
not
a
comic.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
like comic accurate penguin is not like a little freak man. He's just a short, fat, bald dude. Like, so the
If
name
I
comes
think
from
of
the
the
fact that
Penguin,
it's
I think of Danny DeVito as the Penguin. I'm like that's the Penguin. That guy.
yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
I'm just saying, like, comic accurate wise, it's not really it's not really penguin, but it is a version of penguin that people absolutely identify with. Even if you look at penguin in like adaptations, like cartoons and stuff, they definitely draw more from the Danny DeVito penguin, whether it be the penguin that Tom Kenny voiced in the Batman cartoon or the Bruce Timm version. All of them got the flipper fingers.
And the big nose.
Yep, the big nose and the flipper fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I kind of noticed about both of these movies is the kind of commentary on the role of power and perception. So, for example, in the '89 Batman, Batman's kind of dealing with the reputation that Joker, who is like on television, it does the ending with the parade with the balloons of throwing out money to people, kind of like winning over the general population, and then also the newspapers' coverage of him kind of portraying him as like a monster. So he's dealing with it there, and then the whole like Penguin plot in Batman Returns is him becoming the mayor and him using a lot of that power to, get revenge and fuck with people.
Yep.
Any thoughts before we go into some of the more castings? We don't need to touch on Michael Keaton's casting because he came back in for this one. But there's some interesting names got thrown around.
I don't think I have anything else to say about it.
Okay. So
what does John have to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think it speaks for itself with Danny DeVito's memorable performance and Michelle Pfeiffer being awesome, and then, like you say, Christopher Walken as well. Like, just when you thought the movie had peaked, then you get Christopher Walken with some crazy hair.
Which is an incredible treat for everybody.
Absolutely.
So originally they did not have the idea that Penguin was going to be a little freak. Originally they were going to go with the more traditional version of the Penguin as just a wealthy guy from old money that was holding a grudge against the Wayne family because they were another powerful old money family. So some original ideas. Tim Burton originally wanted to cast Marlon Brando, which would have been interesting.
Whoa!
Right?
I mean, let's be honest. He's no fucking way he's gonna do it.
No, he would have been a massive pain in the ass like he was in The Island of Dr. Moreau.
And understandably so. Have you seen that film?
Yeah.
It sucks. And not because Brando was a pain in the ass.
That's also not going to be the first time we bring up The Island of Dr. Moreau in today's episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah, right? Other names were Dustin...
John, have you seen that film?
Yes.
Island of Dr. Moreau?
What do you think of it?
Many moons ago. I can't really remember too much about it, so...
It's not a good sign.
That's never a good sign, no.
Yeah, they had to make some changes due to some personnel issues they had, so it doesn't mirror the book very well.
Oh, not at all. There's some real choices made in that film.
Yep. So other actors who were up for the role of Penguin, Dustin Hoffman was a preference that Warner Brothers had.
Okay.
Christopher Lloyd was also rumored to have been a consideration, as well as Robert De Niro.
What?
Yeah, Bobby De Niro was almost the Penguin, apparently.
How?
Well, like you said, they were just going with the original idea of him just being a corrupt aristocrat. So,
but yeah, I wouldn't pay Robert De Niro to do that.
So when they had the idea of doing the deformed human bird hybrid man, that's when they went with Danny DeVito.
Jeez, that's really harsh on Danny DeVito.
Right. Now, Danny DeVito since then has a lot of love for this character. DC not too long ago, probably 2-3 years ago, they did this comic that was sort of like a collection of villain stories, and one of them was written about the Penguin, written by Danny DeVito, and he said that it was sort of how he envisioned the character would be if he had survived Batman Returns, in which Penguin is sort of like this unlikely hero who saves the world from global warming and is married to Catwoman. Huh. So, yeah, Danny DeVito had a good time with that one.
That's nice.
So the other villain, of course, is Selena Kyle, Catwoman. Originally, Annette Bening was cast, but she had to drop out because she was pregnant. And in sort of the opposite issue, they had a lot of actresses lobbying to get the part. Ellen Barkin, Bridget Fonda, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Julie Newmar, who's played Catwoman in the 60s show, Lena Olin, Susan Sarandon, Raquel Welch, and some of the more interesting names were Cher and Madonna. Madonna, who is still getting into acting at this point, where she was in Dick Tracy and stuff. Now, of course, the most famous one was Sean Young, who was originally supposed to be Vicky Vale in the first Batman movie. And have you heard any of the Sean Young Catwoman stories?
No.
So she showed up on a late-night talk show host when this movie was still in development, dressed as Catwoman, pitching her being Catwoman. I think it was Arsenio. And she apparently went to the Warner Brothers film lot in a homemade Catwoman costume for an impromptu audition for Tim Burton, who reportedly hid under his desk. So she just surprised Tim Burton in his office dressed as Catwoman. So there you go.
If you're freaking out Tim Burton, that says a lot.
Yep, it does. Originally, they wanted to the Christopher Walken role was kind of modeled after a character that Vincent Price played. Walken more modeled the role after some very corrupt people before. And he said, quote, "I tend to play mostly villains and twisted people, unsavory guys. I think it's my face and the way I look. If you do something effective, producers want you to do it again and again." So apparently Burgess Meredith was supposed to make a cameo as Penguin's father, but became ill, and that's why he was replaced with Paul Rubens.
Did you know Paul Rubens went on to play Penguin's dad in Gotham as well, the TV series that came out like 5 years ago or whatever it was?
Oh, it's been a bit longer than 5 years, but I did not know that, and that's awesome though.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Pee Wee.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched on a couple of things. There's some of the controversies that went around with it was, of course, Batman killing people. So that was the writers did not care about comic book fans. They didn't care about comic accurate Batman. Sort of a preview of Zack Snyder in his treatment of the character. But yeah, Batman straight up blows a dude up with a bomb. Just blows him up.
Yeah, but it's funny though.
He kills a bunch of people with a machine gun on the Batmobile.
That was an accident.
So some other things were PETA was not a big fan of how the penguins were treated because they were real penguins.
Real penguins.
So PETA was not a big fan of it, mainly also because the birds, they didn't get fresh drinking water. Instead, they got a small chlorinated pool, which that's not good to drink.
Nope.
But yeah, Tim Burton apparently insisted that they did not use real animals because of that, and ensured that the penguins were treated well. Apparently, there were some live penguins that were being mixed with puppets, and 40 emperor penguin suits were worn by little people. Just across the board. All they used every resource available, including some CGI.
Wow.
There is a scene in which Michelle Pfeiffer puts a live bird in her mouth. That was real, and Michelle Pfeiffer said she would never do that again because she did not consider, the risk of disease and injury.
Well, you don't think about that kind of thing. You just do it.
Yes. There's a scene in which there's an organ grinder monkey, and it's supposed to go down a set of stairs with a note for the penguin. And apparently, Danny DeVito, in its full costume, the monkey didn't care for it. As DeVito stated, it leapt at his testicles and said, "The monkey looked at me, froze, and then leapt right at my balls. Thank God it was a padded costume." And also, 4 stuntmen were injured in a scene where one of Max Schreck's superstores exploded. So there was some stuff there.
Just adds to the film, though.
Yeah, I did also see that there was the end credits scene, the very final scene before the credits run, is the bat signal and Catwoman kind of appearing in the foreground to imply that she didn't die. Apparently, that was added in post-production. So apparently, because test audiences really liked the character, so they had to stand in use it because Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't available to shoot that shot. So I guess they were like, "Oh, the audience really liked the Catwoman character. We can't just, maybe we show that she's still alive and we can bring her back in later."
They liked the character so much that they never used her again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we didn't really get to talk about Danny Elfman doing the music for Batman Returns and Batman.
Oh, yeah.
So, yep, legendary composer and frontman for the band Oingo Boingo. Not sure if your feelings on Oingo Boingo, but he did the first soundtrack. Apparently, he was reluctant to do this one. He didn't care for Prince's pop songs getting put in with his soundtrack. I think he was a little happier, though, because one of my favorite bands, Susie and the Banshees, had a song called Face to Face that got used in the costume ball scene with Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne having a very romantic moment. So good times there. Apparently, Tim Burton and Danny Elfman had a fallout during the making of this movie, and ended up becoming friends again after it was all over. But I just find that kind of amusing.
Well, it's nice that they became friends again.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts on Batman Returns before I kind of go into the numbers?
It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really paint it as a kids movie, that's for sure. But like, especially as I'm pretty sure that wasn't there like some promotional tie-ins with like Burger King or McDonald's or something.
It was McDonald's.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm not sure they know their audience, but
Well, and the action figure is really interesting too, because so originally Tim Burton wanted to put a Robin in the movies that was going to be played by Marlon Wayans. So there's a Robin action figure that was made to tie into the Batman Returns, but it was designed to look like the Tim Drake Robin in the comics and not an African American man. Additionally, the Penguin figures that were made were reprints, or not reprints, but recastings of the DC Superpowers figures that came out
yeah,
before them. So the Penguin there is wearing like a little suit and a little top hat and looks nothing like the Danny DeVito version.
I had that
Ooh.
penguin. In fact, I had both versions. I had the one in the blue costume and the one in the black costume.
So here's some of the numbers on that. So Batman, the 89 movie did 77%. Batman Returns did 82%. So a little bit more well received by Rotten Tomatoes. However, on the financial side, Batman did $411 million. Batman Returns only did 266. So
Bullshit.
did not make as much money as the first, and the budget was 50 to 80 million. So it was still considered a success, but it had a higher budget and didn't make as much money back. Warner Brothers was not happy with Batman Returns making less money, and they also were not happy with how the material was deemed too dark and inappropriate for children, because McDonald's ended up recalling the Happy Meal toys because of this. So after this, they were not interested with Tim Burton coming back to direct a third movie. At that point, they kind of started looking at other directors to fill in the slot for Batman Forever. So Sam Raimi, which is fucking hysterical when you think about like Tim Burton's a little too dark. Let's get the guy who did Evil Dead 2.
Right.
And so Joel Schumacher was selected instead, and he got Tim Burton's blessing. So the first thing about Batman Forever is you have a different director who has a very different image. And Joel Schumacher absolutely loved the kitschiness of the 1960s Batman. And so you start to really see that. Batman Forever is a lot more neon. So you're kind of losing the dark and forever grim atmosphere of Batman and Batman Returns, which, like you said, even there's no sunny days. Even in this scene shot in the day, it's gloomy outside. Batman Forever, night in Gotham is sort of like a weird nightclub almost. There's a lot of like vibrant pinks and oranges and yellow like neon lights that are used to accentuate things. First off, we mentioned this before, but Val Kilmer was brought in to be Batman. There was a lot of other choices on the casting, including William Baldwin, Dean Cain, Tom Hanks, even Keanu Reeves, Kurt Russell, Ralph Fiennes, Daniel Day-Lewis, Johnny Depp, and Kilmer was selected on this one, and he signed on without reading a script or even knowing who the director was going to be.
Can you imagine Daniel Day-Lewis doing this fucking film?
Yeah, right.
What the fuck?
He would not enjoy himself one bit.
He would not. No. That would have been a bad time.
So I remember in magazines when they were going to when there were all these rumors about what the next Batman movie was going to be, and there was a couple of ideas. One, they wanted to do an adaptation of Frank Miller's Batman Year One, and apparently Michael Keaton was really into the idea, but Warner Brothers shot that down because they wanted a sequel. They did not want to do a prequel. And I remember reading in a magazine that they thought about bringing in the Scarecrow as a villain with the Riddler and the return of Catwoman, but they did not like it. Apparently, before they decided Tim Burton was not going to be uh, brought in, they had focus group meetings, and he hated the title, and he was more interested in directing Ed Wood. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen Ed Wood, but that's a
I love that film.
Hell
great
yeah.
movie.
I love Ed Wood. It's so good. It's underrated.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that Warner Brothers had is they wanted this movie to appeal more to what they refer to as the MTV generation. So that was going to be like people who were kids in the 80s and are now in their becoming teenagers in the 90s. So they were focused a little bit more on merchandising and making sure that they could do it, unlike the Tim Burton, where, like we mentioned, McDonald's pulled their sponsorship essentially.
Yeah.
So we talked about Val Kilmer being cast. The love interest in this movie is a psychiatrist named Chase Meridian, and originally they wanted Rene Russo. They got Nicole Kidman. Other names that were mentioned were Sandra Bullock, Robin Wright, Jean Triplehorn, and Linda Hamilton.
Rob De Niro.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact about Robert De Niro, because one of the villains is Two-Face, played by Harvey Dent. Billy D. Williams took on that role of Harvey Dent in the 1989 Batman, but Joel Schumacher cast Tommy Lee Jones instead, which is sort of a weird if you consider these movies in a canon. Like, Harvey Dent went from being an African-American man to Tommy Lee Jones.
Mhm.
But other people rumored to have been considered for the role of Two-Face: Al Pacino, Clint Eastwood,
What?
Martin Sheen, and Robert De Niro.
What the fuck? These have to be lies, right?
No, okay. These are
Clint Eastwood? Whoa,
Apparently,
are you really telling me?
This is just who they wanted to cast.
Well,
Not necessarily saying who are in talks to cast, but this is who Joel Schumacher was like in the laundry list of ideas of, this is who I want for this role. He was like Clint Eastwood.
But
Could you imagine like cranky ass Clint Eastwood's Two-Face though?
no, that's why I don't get. Like, why would anybody look at Clint Eastwood and go, he would be the perfect Two-Face? Clint Eastwood has one face.
So, Tommy Lee Jones was apparently reluctant to the idea of taking on this role, but his son insisted that he do it. The other major villain was the Riddler. So apparently Robin Williams was originally considered, and so was John Malkovich. Robin Williams apparently turned it down, and Jim Carrey was offered the role instead. Jim Carrey, who this is 1994, was entering his like hottest period as an actor.
Yep.
Also, allegedly, Michael Jackson was lobbying really hard to play the role, which would have made this even wilder if Michael Jackson in 1994 was playing the Riddler.
Michael Jackson's the Riddler?
That's
Surely Michael Jackson should have played Two-Face. Thank you.
So other names that were originally considered, Brad Dourif shows up again because that's who Tim Burton really wanted to play the Joker and or Scarecrow. Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees.
What?
Yeah. Matthew Broderick, Phil Hartman, Steve Martin, and Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer?
Did you imagine Frasier as the Riddler?
Oh my god, that's really funny. That would be, oh my god, that's such a total, like, if you think about Jim Carrey's Riddler, very over the top, very like in your face. That's a totally different Riddler.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that was kind of the idea. Like, so Tommy Lee Jones did not fucking care about this movie. He hated acting alongside Jim Carrey. And he just played Two-Face like Cesar Romero's Joker for all intents and purposes. I will tell you, the setting for like Two-Face's lair is something that sticks with me because I thought it was so fucking cool. Another thing to consider was Jim Carrey took his inspiration from Frank Gorshin's Riddler from the 1960 series, which I am absolutely all for. I fucking love Frank Gorshin in that.
Yeah, you can definitely see that influence.
Oh, absolutely. The giggling.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also our first movie with Robin, with Dick Grayson taking on it, and the casting was interesting. So originally, Marlon Wayans was given the role for Tim Burton, and when Schumacher took it over, he scrapped that idea. Although Marlon Wayans got paid for 2 movies that he never was in, which is wild to think about. Easiest fucking money.
Second easiest. The easiest is working for AW.
Leonardo DiCaprio was considered, but he decided he didn't want the role. Other actors who were considered: Matthew Damon, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, because you can't separate the Corys. We're a triad. We're all in together.
You're a group. You get in a club. You get a little special magic rings.
Yep. I'm the only one who I'm not gonna say it. Mark Wahlberg, Michael Worth, Danny Dyer, Toby Stevens, Ewan McGregor, Jude Law, Alan Cumming, Scott Speedman were all considered.
I mean, Danny Dyer, the UK actor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine that?
Wait.
All right, Batman. How's it going, mate?
Let me be real clear. Danny Dyer was going to be who?
Robin.
Danny Dyer.
Danny fucking Dyer.
Somebody who was in charge of casting a Batman film looked and listened to Danny Dyer and thought, this could work.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What?
So
that's bananas.
Yeah, right. So I also heard the story that Christian Bale was also up for the role. With the story being is that they went to a comic convention and they went up to kids and they held up pictures of Christian Bale and Chris O'Donnell and they said who could win in a fight. And allegedly, if the story is accurate, which I don't, that seems a ludicrous idea, that apparently a majority of the kids said Chris O'Donnell could beat Christian Bale in a fight.
I agree with this if the picture they used was Christian Bale from Newsies.
Yes. If they just showed him the clip of singing how he really wanted to go to Santa Fe.
Yes, then I understand why the kids picked him. Yep.
So Chris O'Donnell was cast as Robin, and this is my favorite bit because very famously U2 had like the big song on this soundtrack. And the music video they shot for it, this was during the period of time where Bono had created the Mephisto character. I don't know what your U2 lore is, Dylan. I imagine it's very, very in depth as being an Irishman.
Almost. We're as from living in Ireland, you're forced to acknowledge U2.
Yeah,
like that's just part of we have like 5 artists that come from Ireland, so you know who they all are. And most of the people in Ireland are very irritated by U2. But whatever character you just said,
Mephisto.
I don't know.
Please look up a picture of Mephisto.
How do you spell that?
Macphisto.
It's basically
Joel
the
Schumacher. Joel Schumacher really wanted to work Bono as Mephisto into this movie.
Corey?
Yes.
Why did you do this to me?
Oh, man.
I could have gone the rest of my life happily not knowing this fucking thing existed.
So yeah, the music video that they made for the song that U2 did, Kiss Me, Kill Me, Thrill Me, I think is what it was called. Anyway, the music video featured clips from Batman Forever mixed in with these animated things where Bono's alter egos, The Fly and Mephisto, are like interacting with each other. It's weird. Apparently this movie, there were some issues on set. Joel Schumacher did not get along with Val Kilmer. Allegedly called him childish and impossible.
Oh, I understand the reference you made earlier now.
How about Dr. Moreau? Yeah.
Yes.
And apparently he refused to speak to Joel Schumacher for 2 weeks after Joel Schumacher told Val Kilmer to stop being rude. And Joel Schumacher also said that Tommy Lee Jones was a source for trouble. As Joel Schumacher said, quote, Jim Carrey was a gentleman and Tommy Lee was threatened by him. I'm tired of defending overpaid, overprivileged actors. I pray I don't work with them again. And in a 2014 interview, Jim Carrey acknowledged that Tommy Lee Jones was not friendly to him and recounted an incident wherein Jones found him offset during the production and said, quote, "I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery."
He said that on the Norm Macdonald show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember there was a big thing between Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones that came out after that film, and yeah, Jim Carrey said that, which is wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's so what I think's weird is that you said that Tommy Lee Jones was modeling his Two-Face on from the old Batman TV show.
Yeah.
But to
The
me,
Joker.
well, yes, well, you know what I mean. He's modeling it on somebody else, and that's his justification as an actor for the part that he was playing. But for me, if you were at all clued into A, the time that they were in, and B, like your sensibilities as an actor, you would have known that you can't out Jim Carrey.
Mm.
You're on set with Jim Carrey, and he's going like full balls to the wall. You know, here he goes, Jim Carrey. Which was great, which worked perfectly for that Riddler. I thought like it was such a unique character, but the Two-Face character was always trying to bow up to him, and you're like, this isn't gonna work, man. You aren't. I like Tommy Lee Jones. You're not Jim Carrey. You need to have seen that, like, read the room and go, all right, I'm gonna try to be a little more subtle, just a little bit, a little bit more toned down, and work it that way, so that there's just like justification between the two characters as opposed to them being almost the same character.
So to hit on something real quick, the soundtrack to this goes really hard. Apparently, it's sold as much as Prince's soundtrack for the Batman 1989 film. Listen to the artists that are on the soundtrack to this movie: U2, PJ Harvey, Massive Attack, The Flaming Lips, The Offspring covering The Damned, Nick Cave, Sunny Day Real Estate, and The Flaming Lips. So that's just like naming.
What
like that's
the fuck
insane.
are Sunny Day Real Estate being on there?
Right? The Godfathers of Emo? What the
fuck? What?
And it's always weird how there's like a weird in all of these movies so far, there's sort of like an OG of goth culture on there, like with Nick fucking Cave being on here too. It's wild as shit. Of course, everybody knows this soundtrack because "Kiss from a Rose" by Seal won 3 Grammy Awards for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year. Good job on him. We've not really talked about the contents of the movie itself, just sort of all the weird stuff that went into making it. So real quick, Two-Face is there. He doesn't really seem to have too much motivation except for getting money. Batman is there on his own, doing his own thing, dealing with the psychological trauma of like what has happened to him in his life, thus him seeing the therapist. Riddler shows up, and he's like a Bruce Wayne superfan that gets dejected and decides to get revenge by using his invention that basically steals people's brainwaves, very much like the Matt Frewer character from the Generation X movie that we watched. And Robin loses both of his parents to Two-Face and his brother in a senseless act of violence, and it's about Bruce Wayne taking him in and helping him, find his way as an adult. So that's sort of the plot to Batman Forever. They play around with secret identities a lot, but really it's sort of there's a lot of goofiness in that movie.
Yes, it is very heavy on the goofy.
Very heavy on the goofy.
Which is kind of what I liked. And maybe this plays into exactly what they were looking for, but like as a kid, I loved that film. And I still do kind of like it. I have a real soft spot for it. But as a kid, when you watch it, it's what you want from a Batman film.
Mm-hmm.
There's a crazy over-the-top villain that you can't take your eyes off. There's a twist, you don't know what's going to happen, but Batman still manages to kick some ass. It's what you want as a kid, So maybe if that is what those, network executives were trying to go for, they didn't like the Tim Burton one because it was a bit too dark, and they went for something that was very clearly kind of campy and over the top, but kids got it. Kids liked it. So
yeah,
mission accomplished in a way, right?
Yeah. So apparently this movie, according to Joel Schumacher, his cut was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
How long is it normally?
Not nearly that. Not nearly that.
47 minutes.
122. So it's 122 minutes. So we're looking at a little over 2 hours. So there's almost another hour of content that got cut, which very
Wow.
famously involves like a giant bat. Because McFarlane is putting out a Batman Forever toy line. So like basically they're super deluxe figures, but the characters and actors from the Batman Forever movie. They look pretty sick. But yeah, we have. Is there any more thoughts on Batman Forever before we get into the numbers?
That answers that question.
There you go.
Thank you.
No problem. So Rotten Tomatoes, to give you kind of a quick rundown: Batman 77%, Batman Returns 82%, Batman Forever 41. So
Sounds
half
about
of
right.
equal, like exactly half of the critical acclaim of Batman Returns.
Yeesh.
Don't worry,
Kids
it'll
loved
get.
it.
Yeah. But it did make $336 million, which was more than Batman Returns did. Not as much as Batman 89, but it was more than that. The budget was $100 million. They made 336. So a little bit better performance-wise, but at the end of the day, still fell short of the 1989 Batman. So all good things must come to an end. Are you guys ready to discuss Batman and Robin?
Not really. Can we
If
go back
we
to
have
talk about the Penguin again?
So, Batman and Robin, 1997. Joel Schumacher is back to reprise his role. They brought the same writer back from Batman Forever, and they decided to. There was a bit more of a rush for this movie. Normally, there's like a good 3-year break. So, 89 to 92, 92 to 95. This one was only a 2-year break between the movies. And Joel Schumacher wanted to pay homage to the classic comic books of Batman of his childhood, which again was firmly in the Silver Age where things got real goofy and campy. You're going to see that. A lot of this is based off of the Bruce Timm animated series episode Heart of Ice. It was written by Paul Dini. So that is our Mr. Freeze storyline. And Chris O'Donnell came back as Robin. Val Kilmer decided not to come back. And of course, Joel Schumacher stated that, quote, he sort of quit and we sort of fired him.
Didn't he do some other quote where he was like, Val Kilmer did me 2 great things as Batman. The first thing he did was he was Batman. That led to part of the success of that film. And the second great thing he did was refuse to be Batman for the second film.
Yeah, apparently Val Kilmer was not aware that they were going to rush this one, and he'd already committed to The Saint and Heat. So that one got thrown out. So when we're talking about people to potentially replace him, David Duchovny alleged that he was considered for the role, but jokingly said that his nose was too big. And
Johnny Dyer.
Yeah, Danny Dyer again. William Baldwin apparently
Robert
was
De Niro.
considered. But really, they ended up going with George Clooney because they liked his performance in From Dusk Till Dawn, and I guess they liked the way he carried his character in that film. So we get a Batman that has.
In the last one, did you say one of the Baldwins was considered?
William Baldwin again. Billy Baldwin again.
Why?
Billy Baldwin is kind of the only, and he's kind of the only likable of them. Like all of the Baldwins are equally detestable, but he's like the most likable. So that's like being the most popular guy in prison, you know?
Yes. I will say he's probably the most likable of the Baldwin. He didn't kill a guy.
Yeah.
That we know
of.
Yeah, we know.
Hey, there we go.
So they wanted to go with Mr. Freeze as the villain, where very famously we know that Arnold Schwarzenegger was cast. It was the 90s were a huge time for Arnold Schwarzenegger as well as the 80s. Other names that were considered were Ed Harris, Anthony Hopkins, and Patrick Stewart, although Joel Schumacher has denied that Patrick Stewart was considered. So Joel Schumacher wanted to cast Schwarzenegger because he decided that Mr. Freeze had to be big and strong, He wanted a big boy. So they stated that the Mr. Freeze costume cost $1.5 million to develop and make.
Yeesh.
That's a chunk of the budget. So Schwarzenegger did not want to shave his head, so he put on a bald cap. They put a blue LED light inside of his mouth because that's like a thing when he talks, it like lights up. Apparently, they had to wrap it in balloons because battery acid started to leak into Schwarzenegger's mouth. You don't want that. And yeah, apparently it took 6 hours to apply the makeup every day, which was a bit of a problem because his shooting time in his contract was limited to 12 hours a day. So half of his time that he was committed to being there was spent putting on makeup. So our other villain in this movie is, of course, Poison Ivy, who is portrayed by Uma Thurman. That was a very big coming of age for some gentlemen. And other actresses that were considered for the role were Demi Moore, Sharon Stone, and Julia Roberts. Apparently, Joel Schumacher first became very aware of her from the movie The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which, are you familiar with that movie?
I haven't seen it. John, have you seen it?
Of course.
I think you would love it, Dylan. It's real fucking out there. I think you'd love it.
Okay.
Yeah, put that on your list.
Sure.
All right. So, additionally, we have the addition of Batgirl, played by Alicia Silverstone, and apparently she had to lose 10 pounds for the role, and would later go on to say that there was a lot of body shaming while filming promotion for the movie. So that's not fun. Chris O'Donnell, in regards to the making of this movie, Chris O'Donnell stated that Batman Forever felt sharper and more focused, and it felt like everything got softer. He said, the first one I felt like I was making a movie, and the second one I felt like I was making a toy commercial. He also said that the costume as Robin was a lot less comfortable than it was in Batman Forever. John Glover, who we just mentioned, who played Dr. Jason Woodrow, John stated, quote, Joel Schumacher would sit on a crane with a megaphone and yell before each take, remember everyone, this is a cartoon. It was hard to act because that kind of set the tone for the film.
I mean, that makes sense when you watch that film.
Yeah, it's real out there. So a fun thing about here is, again, the soundtrack goes real fucking hard. Very famously, the soundtrack is sort of bookended by two songs by the Smashing Pumpkins.
I remember one of them.
Yeah, Dylan, if you don't remember the titles, it's going to come as a surprise.
Yeah.
The first is "The End is the Beginning is the End."
Yeah.
And the last song is "The Beginning is the End is the Beginning."
Fucking Billy Corgan.
Yeah. They end up using "The Beginning is the End is the Beginning" in the trailer for the first trailer for the Watchmen movie in the early 2010s as well. Good song though. I'm a big fan of both of those Smashing Pumpkins songs. So interesting soundtrack again, which is really funny because they had like those Smashing Pumpkins songs are kind of dark sounding. Yeah. So it's funny to me that the really cartoony Batman movie also has like the harder Smashing Pumpkins songs, whereas the darker Batman Forever has like the U2 songs.
Well, that was the Smashing Pumpkins sign at the time. You know, the Corey, you'll know this. John, you'll know this too, really. But that was when they're after like a lot of their more experimental stuff, they were doing a lot of darker stuff for that album, and that's the kind of sign they came out for.
Yeah, that was like what, Adore and
it was Adore.
Machinima, God of Machines.
It was definitely before Machinima. I think it was Adore that had a very specific sign to it, and that's what came out for just everything they were doing, you know.
Again, the Pumpkins won a Grammy Award for this, so for Best Hard Rock Performance. So if in the 90s, if you wanted to win a Grammy, you had to be on the Batman soundtracks, is what I've learned from this.
Unless you're Sunny Day Real Estate.
Unless I don't think Sunny Day Real Estate would have been wanting a Grammy. It seemed very unlike Jeremy Enig's style.
Okay, but isn't
funny?
Isn't the bassist from Sunny Day Real Estate the bassist for the Foo Fighters now?
Nate Mendel.
Yeah. So like, haven't they won a shit ton of Grammys?
Yeah. So who's
left
now?
Proven.
Yeah. Exactly.
Proven. I missed the opportunity to see Sunny Day Real Estate a couple of years ago. It makes me sad.
You could have seen them.
I could have seen them. They were on tour and they were on tour here.
Wow, that would have been good, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is not comic books or even wrestling related. Go listen to 90 Real Estate.
yeah.
So we kind of hinted at this previously, but the storylines in this movie were the Heart of Ice themed, where Mr. Freeze is stealing a bunch of diamonds and shit so that he can create a cure for his wife Nora, who has an incurable disease and is sort of suspended in animation. In the process of that, a bunch of corrupt scientists sabotaged his work and turned him into the frozen monster man that he is. Uma Thurman had a very similar thing where she was an environmentalist who was attacked and she turns into a weird plant lady. And also former professional wrestler Jeep Swenson played the role of Bane in the most un-Bane-like performance of all time.
Yeah. Do you know what? It took me years to realize that was Bane.
Right?
After I'd seen that film.
Like Bane.
Nothing like Bane. I'm like, are you sure that's Bane? Because he doesn't do anything.
Not at all. And considering
if you're writing Bane, you want to make him like kick ass, and they were like, no, he's this fucking sidekick to the plant woman, who is herself kind of a sidekick to Frost Boy.
Well, no, she that was actually the kind of thing that I liked, was that Uma Thurman had her Poison Ivy had those ulterior motives, so she was just clearly manipulating Mr. Freeze. Because the kind of thing that they kept going to is that Mr. Freeze is just an example of somebody who had a really bad day, and that was going into the Paul Dini thing where he's almost a sympathetic character. It's just that he's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger and he's massive and he's doing a lot of bad ice puns.
They never stop with the puns.
No,
every time
I will tell you,
fucking guy opens his mouth, it's puns.
I will tell you though, my dream Halloween costume is Mr. Freeze when he's in his lair in the polar bear slippers with the bathrobe, making his goons sing the Ice Miser song. Dream Halloween costume. Benefits of being bald. I can do that shit easily.
I will say he's the most entertaining part of the movie as well.
He kind of is. I mean, that's the thing. It's bad, but it's you can't take your eyes off of him.
Yeah,
I think
it's that power of Arnold in the 90s.
That's the most frustrating thing about that film.
Right.
We have to admit that as much as those ice puns annoy the fuck out of me, because that's a very Arnold thing. That's what that used to be a thing in his action films. He would kill somebody, then he'd have a wee quip.
That was just an action movie trope in general, though.
But Arnold did that a lot.
Yes.
Because he was in a lot of action films. He had killed a lot of people, did a lot of quips. So somebody was like, what if we just take the quips and put them on Arnold all the time? How could that be at all irritating? And it turns out incredibly irritating. And yet, as we've already established, the least irritating part of the film.
So real quick, I think the thing that we got to touch on, and we can touch on it as long as we want or not. So the reason Batman is getting involved in all this Mr. Freeze stuff is that Alfred Pennyworth has contracted the same disease that Nora Freeze has contracted, and he is dying. Which leads us to the introduction to the Batgirl character, who, in a weird thing, I've yet to really see an explanation for it. So in the comics, there's been 3 different Batgirls, but the one Batgirl that everybody knows is Barbara Gordon. Emphasis on Gordon. She's Commissioner Gordon's daughter, right? So in Batman and Robin, Barbara Gordon is Barbara Pennyworth, where she is Alfred's niece that was sent off to boarding school. But Michael Gough is very old.
Yes.
Very old. So is his brother or sister 30 years younger than he is?
I mean, that does happen.
I can tell you that for sure. My brother is 15 years older than I am. My brother is 51 years old, looking down the barrel at 52. I get it. But it's still wild to think that Alicia Silverstone, whose character is kind of implies still young girl, maybe in college, her first few years, her uncle is a septuagenarian.
So, but let's put this in the context, right? So, what age do you think that character is supposed to be? Alicia Silverstone's character.
I don't know, because that's roughly what bothers me about it.
What do we think? Maybe 18, 20?
Yeah,
I'd say
20.
20. I'd say
Right,
20.
let's say 20. So if you had a daughter right now, and then that daughter 20 years later is 20, what age is your brother? 70.
My brother might be dead.
Right. So you can see that timeline kind of checks out.
All right, let's push past the age thing because it still makes me wonder why did we do that?
Right.
Why
right.
did they have
that's
to
the
why
biggest
did
point,
we
Jim.
go with why did we decide that Barbara Gordon needed to be Alfred's niece and not Commissioner Gordon? Because we were talking about how the same actor played Commissioner Gordon in all 4 movies and he never had a role, really, considering how important Commissioner Gordon has always been in the comics.
That's it then, because like at least Alfred had a part to play in like an emotional crux in like some of the previous movies, whereas Commissioner Gordon was just like a plot device basically in the 3 previous ones.
Yeah.
So here we have there's so many things I want to talk about. And I want to hit them very quick and brief because I don't want this to go too long. We've been a while since we've had a longer episode, but
Yeah.
like seriously, the things I want to hit on. Do you think they just put Batgirl in this movie because she doesn't even have the bat ears on her costume, despite the toy they made of her having them? She was just wearing a mask like Robin. But do you think they put the Barbara Pennyworth character in this movie to try to sell toys to little girls?
Yes.
Yes, because they made like a Barbie. Because I remember they made like a Barbie of Poison Ivy and a Barbie of like Batgirl. So that's my second point. Do you think they put a girl in here so they can have somebody punch Poison Ivy?
Yes.
Because I don't think Michael Keaton never punched her. Punched Catwoman.
Well, because he wanted to sleep with her.
Yeah, see? So, all right, so that's the other thing. 3, burlesque scene of Poison Ivy undressing as a giant purple gorilla.
Mhm.
One of the best scenes in the movie, or no?
Is it better than them all ice skating around the fucking laboratory?
That's pretty good too.
That's the one thing I remember about that film. That is the point where I'm like, I think I'm good. I think I'm done with watching Batman today.
Yeah, yeah.
This
That's
is
early in the movie as well.
Yeah,
what
it's very quick.
'Cause, yeah, it's like within the first 5-10 minutes.
I saw that. And I'm like, this. I know this is gonna sum up the rest of the film. I don't think I need to see the rest of the film.
Yeah. So a couple of things are like the weird jokey stuff, like as the John Glover statement about Joel Schumacher saying, remember, this is a cartoon. We have the Bat credit card. That was the thing that came up in this where so basically Poison Ivy secretes a hormone that makes every man around her super fucking horny, right? That's that. Because that's like she builds she puts that tension between Batman and Robin where Robin becomes transfixed with her and assumes that Batman's trying to steal her from him and he wants to go off on his own and go solo. And which is interesting because they designed the Robin costume to look more like Nightwing's with a cape. But regardless, we have that going into there's that plot point. Other plot point, Barbara Pennyworth and her grand uncle dad thing with Alfred. Other plot point, we got to find a cure for Alfred, and the only person who might have it is Mr. Freeze. We got all that stuff out of the way. There's a lot of plot points. None of them are particularly good.
No.
But so we have the Bat credit card, and I remember commercials for McDonald's. I can't remember if this was the Val Kilmer era, which is probably very well was, but like Batman in the Batmobile, and Alfred says, "Sir, do you want me to, prepare dinner for you?" And he goes, "No, thanks. I'll get drive-through." And he goes to a McDonald's. Have you noticed it doesn't seem like a lot of these movies do the tie-in stuff to like fast food restaurants or stuff anymore? That's really weird.
Probably for the best, right?
Probably for the best, but it's interesting.
Like if you're making a film, do you have to make that film specifically for McDonald's, or could you just make it because you want to make a film?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll get the numbers out of the way real quick. So 77% Batman 89, 82% Batman Returns, 41% Batman Forever. Batman and Robin, give me a number that you think it is.
18.
John.
I'm gonna go 25.
Dylan, you're closest. 12.
Whoa.
Whoa!
Not well received. Now, it's important to note that Rotten Tomatoes is the score as of today. Anyone can go into Rotten Tomatoes and make a new thing. So this is not to suggest that it was this poorly received at the time. It was, though. A lot of people called it incoherent and mediocre, but
Correct.
So money-wise, 411 million, 266 million for Batman Returns, 336 million for Batman Forever. Batman and Robin, what do you think?
86.
That's low.
Yeah. I'm gonna say 150.
238. So not as bad as you guys thought, but 238 million is what it made. Okay, so here's a couple things. The movies were well received. Like, people did like these Batman movies. They were very heavily marketed. The toy lines, the clothing, all that stuff, take that into consideration. Another thing, George Clooney's popularity at the time.
True.
Like, George Clooney was considered like one of the world's sexiest men at this point.
He still is.
Apparently. So those are the 4 Batman movies from the 90s. As you can tell, they went from like Tim Burton's focused on the art and the visual storytelling. Fuck the comic books. Fuck little kids. Fuck product placement.
Don't fuck little kids. Don't do that.
To Joel Schumacher, who kind of bridged that gap originally and then just went way too far for the next movie. And it kind of tanked these versions of the Batman movies. And there was not another Batman movie until Christian Bale being cast for Batman Begins with Christopher Nolan, which was a very drastically different take on the character. Any thoughts about Batman and Robin before we kind of just put a cap on this whole thing?
I mean, I think the reviews kind of spoke for itself, right? Like, I didn't like it. Like, I really didn't like it. The other one, you know, was kind of campy and over the top, but like it kind of worked in that film. But a lot of the stuff in this film just didn't work for me. It was very campy. I didn't know kind of what film it wanted to be. I just wasn't a fan. And I thought, to his credit, you know, George Clooney did the best he could. A lot of those guys did the best they could.
Yeah.
But God damn it, they just could. George Clooney was a better Batman than Val Kilmer. I don't know if that's controversial, but I'm going to say that. I'm going to put that on record.
I would say that's controversial because I don't necessarily agree with that.
Okay. I thought Val Kilmer was a really boring Batman. Just super boring.
But you consider, like, at the end of the day, Bruce Wayne is not somebody you want to hang out with. And I thought that George Clooney was a bit too charming for the role.
But that's George Clooney, though.
He's just playing George Clooney. That's the problem I had with him.
Right. But he's great. So I understand you wouldn't want to be friends with Bruce Wayne. Fair enough. But like you said, because George Clooney's so charming, you can't help but like him. Whereas Val Kilmer, as Batman, as Bruce Wayne, both of them, he was just super boring. He just wasn't interesting. Like, he had the same face through the whole film. You know what I mean? Did not change his face.
I just bought him as a damaged individual, which is what he was.
I bought him as a slightly malfunctioning robot.
John, weigh in.
Well, I mean, like, on that front, I can say that Val Kilmer felt like a continuation of what Michael Keaton was trying to do. Or
I
at least
I don't think so.
Keaton had a quiet intensity to him.
Yeah. And I think that's what Val Kilmer was going for. And it just came across as quite robotic and
boring.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, if you're ranking out of the 4 films we've just talked about, if you're ranking the Batman, I'd say Michael Keaton, then George Clooney, then Val Kilmer.
I mean, I probably agree with that, to be honest.
Right.
I just disagree. I have such a problem with George Clooney just being George Clooney. Because we're talking about actors. Don't you have a problem with
Val Kilmer just being Val Kilmer? George Clooney being George Clooney is more interesting than Val Kilmer being Val Kilmer.
But I'm looking at who's playing Batman, and like, I read a lot of Batman, and I do not see George Clooney at all in any of the adaptations I've ever read. Even going back to like the 1960s with Adam West, like George Clooney's just being smarmy ass George Clooney.
Right, but also look what he had to work with.
He was working in a toy commercial, according to Chris O'Donnell.
And he sold a lot of toys.
He certainly did.
So
Didn't translate to success though in the box office.
But in that context, he did a good job.
I actually remember the rumors of like, I remember Jeff Goldblum was teased as like they people were talking about like, oh, he's gonna be Scarecrow.
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro.
He'll get that job one of these days.
Danny Dyer.
Danny Dyer.
John, can you give us the Danny Dyer impersonation one more time?
What geezer? How the fuck's it going?
Remember whenever he called David Cameron a twat on TV?
Oh yeah, it was glorious.
So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. The '90s Batman movies were very big for me, obviously, as a kid. Like I said, Batman Returns was the first time I ever went to the movie theater. It's so interesting to see the different directions that character has gone with Christopher Nolan's more realistic take, and then you have the Robert Pattinson version, which we're getting a sequel of. Ben Affleck's interesting take in the Batman movie as Batman with Snyder, and we're gonna get a whole new Batman for the James Gunn version, and it's gonna feature Damian as his Robin, which will be interesting for the first adaptation of Batman and Son in a live action sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's gonna work, to be honest. Having a kid sidekick, but
that was our rundown of the Batman movies from our childhood for all intents and purposes. If you're curious about more in-depth takes on the actors who played Batman themselves, you got a little snippet there of, George Clooney and Val Kilmer and our opinions on them. Go check back on Volume 2. We have, like I said, the whole episode where we break down every single actor going back to the 1930s to present day. Until next time, though, I've been Corey, and this has been John and Dylan. We're the Smark Avengers, and we hope that you enjoy yourself. We hope that you leave comments under Limp Bizkit music videos, as we've instructed you to. Dylan, is your YouTube page ready to go?
No, but
Okay.
I'm going to be recording stuff next week, so
Awesome.
hopefully sometime in July. But this goes up in July, so
Yep.
if you listen to this, maybe.
Second week of July, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to be recording stuff next week, so maybe go to youtube.com/ExplodyPlays to watch me play Pikmin, and you'll have a great time. If you go to that URL and there is no Pikmin up there yet, then I haven't rebooted the show yet.
Then Dylan's a liar.
No, I'm not a liar. Just I'm lazy.
I've started a new show called Large Old Cup. It is about 30 minutes-ish an episode. At this time, I've only recorded one episode, so ideally there will be like 4 or 5 of them. So it's just a stream of consciousness podcast where I'm just kind of talking about whatever comes to mind or anything interesting has happened. So if you enjoy ramblings, then check that out. John, do you have anything you want to pitch?
No.
You want to just try?
Yeah, make up something.
Yeah.
What's your letterbox?
Okay.
I loved how exasperated you were that you had to think of something to promote for yourself.
I'm going to start a new podcast about
Chocolate.
comic books. Oh, no, we're already doing that. Yeah, I got nothing.
Nice.
What's your letterbox so people can keep up with your current viewing habits?
Oh, yes.
Do you write reviews or do you just rate?
I write small, tiny reviews, but yeah, you can find them on Letterboxd at Big John Bowski, all one word. And yeah, that's me.
All right, well that's our side stuff. If you enjoy our nonsense here, you'll enjoy our nonsense elsewhere. And we hope you have a good one. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that was croaky. It's a long one too. Holy shit.
Nice.
Well done.